Happy Monday, everyone. I can't believe we are halfway through our month-long readathon. It has been wild and crazy. We've had some amazing authors and celebrities on. I hope that you've had a chance to see our virtual MC video from Billy Baldwin today. In it, he mentions that for every dollar we receive, we put 4 books in the hands of children who don't have access to any books. And that is really our mission and the heart of what we do. That's really a great return for your investment. We hope you will find a way to get involved and support the book fairies. No donation is too small. If you haven't checked out Billy's video, please do. He's a great ambassador for our mission. Today, I'm so happy to introduce Alyson Richman, our author for the day. Alyson is the #1 international best-selling author of 7 novels, including The Velvet Hours, The Garden of Letters, and The Lost Wife, which is currently in the middle of becoming a major motion picture. We're so excited about that. Alyson's novels have been published in 30 countries and 20 languages. Her books have received critical acclaim in both the United States and abroad. She lives on Long Island with her husband and 2 children, where she is currently at work on her next novel. Today, she will be reading The Secret of the Clouds, which centers around the transformative bond between a mother and her son, a teacher and a student, a story that will make readers examine what it means to actually live life with a full heart. We love this book. We were excited you chose this to read. Thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. So thank you again, Eileen, for such a wonderful introduction. And when you contacted me to participate in the Readathon, I was just so overjoyed because your mission is very near and dear to my heart. Bringing books into the lives of children is so important. I know my life was transformed from my first grade teacher encouraging me to read, and my first childhood story or collection of poetry by Shel Silverstein, Where the Sidewalk Ends, really inspired my love of being a wordsmith. So I think what you're doing for children everywhere is wonderful. So to begin, I am going to be reading from my novel, The Secret of Clouds, which I always love to describe as being a love letter to teachers everywhere. I really, wanted to do a book that showed how beautiful and impactful the relationship is between a teacher and a student. So I'm going to read from the first chapter here. Let me begin. Let me tell you a secret. A unique kind of person exists in this world, one who radiates light even through a curtain of darkness. As a teacher, I've seen everything in the eyes staring back at me. The child who hates school and wishes to be an outsider, the one who aims only to please, the glassy, sleepy-eyed child, and the one who's perpetually lost in a daydream. But there are those rare moments when a student sits before you and you immediately are certain, and you can't know why, it's just a feeling in your bones that they are different. This child is not to be confused with the student who's the most ambitious or the one who is naturally strong at taking tests. No, this child is the one you sense is extraordinary. It is the one who returns everything you give and more. He or she becomes your beacon, as every word you utter in the classroom suddenly has a destination. It is as if you are teaching toward the light. In the fall of 1999, I met Yuri, a student who one day would teach me lessons I could have never learned in school. I was young, just 2 years out of Columbia Teachers College. I had abandoned my first job after graduation as a personal assistant at a well-respected New York City PR firm, where my days had been so demoralizing and brain-sucking that I often thought eating glass might be less painful than spending 12 hours tending to my boss's Godzilla-like needs. Hoping to switch into something that could restore my faith in humanity and also give my life purpose, I followed my mother's suggestion and went back to school for a degree in teaching. To be honest, I became nearly evangelical in my passion for teaching after I switched careers. The thrill of teaching children is that they don't edit themselves like adults do. Truth can be found in every classroom, and I savored that purity like a glass of water. I wanted to be the teacher who read passages out loud to my students, like my own English teacher had done when I was in 6th grade, so we could all hear the music and the words. Deep down, I believed a story could change us, and that if we read it deeply enough, a good book could transform our souls. It was my second year teaching 6th grade English language arts at Franklin Intermediate School, and I was full of optimism. Everything around me seemed ripe with possibility. My boyfriend Bill and I had just moved in together. We had spent our first 4 years after graduating from the University of Michigan, living a few blocks from each other on the border between the Upper East Side and Spanish Harlem, where the rent was relatively cheap and the bars were plentiful. But I had grown tired of the 20-something scene of young professionals unwinding in front of sports bar TVs and a sea of baseball caps. And the long commute from New York City to my teaching job on Long Island was killing me. I wanted fresh air and a backyard. I imagined Sunday mornings where we could spread out the newspaper and look up from each other through steaming mugs of coffee. Perhaps we'd even get a dog. Bill resisted at first. He enjoyed the convenience of picking up a coffee and a bagel along with his copy of the New York Post from his favorite corner deli before hopping on the number 6 subway each morning to his Midtown office where he sold corporate insurance. He loved the fact that there were 50 delivery places he could always choose from if he wanted something to eat after midnight. He had just started making good money and was happy to have places to spend it. He bought himself a new set of golf clubs and splurged on box seats at Mets games and concerts at Madison Square Garden. But then, over the next few months, one by one, our closest couple friends started announcing their decision to leave the city and go where there was more grass, and the lines for Sunday morning brunch weren't always an hour long. One night over Ray's Pizza, Bill observed that the migration had started. And who am I to be the last man standing? He wiped his mouth with a paper towel. Maybe you're right, Maggie. Let's make the move out to the burbs. We ended up renting a small cottage in Stony Brook, a part of Long Island that felt more like New England than the fancier towns closer to Manhattan. I had found the listing for it in my parents' local penny saver and circled it in bright red ink. The location was perfect. It was close to the middle school where I was teaching, and Bill was thrilled that his Manhattan employer had a satellite office not too far away. I believed I was full on my way to becoming a full-fledged adult at the ripe old age of 26. The new place appealed to the romantic in me, a small white clapboard cottage with red shutters and a brass door knocker. It looked as though we were lifted from the pages of a children's book. Others might have been put off by the low ceilings and the lack of closets, but I was completely sold by what the real estate agent referred to as its old world charm. Who doesn't love flower boxes filled with purple and magenta petunias underneath their windowsill? Who needs air conditioning when you have tall linden trees shading a slate blue roof? Let's try to negotiate a little on the rent, Bill advised. The businessman in him always was thrilled by the chance to get a better deal, but I ignored him. The real estate agent was pointing out the wood-burning fireplace, and I didn't want to be distracted when she was detailing the craftsmanship in the carved molding. That's all the heat you'll need in the winter, she laughed, pointing to the logs of the cherry wood the owners had thoughtfully stacked to the side. I was sold. Already I could imagine myself curled up underneath a blanket, reading Toni Morrison as the fire blazed on. At the end of the tour, Bill thanked the agent and promised we'd get back to her in a few days. I waited until he was several feet ahead of me before I pulled her aside. We'll take it, I said, squeezing her arm. I had always been a sucker for old world charm. I could almost smell the cherry wood, even though it was days away from the start of summer. We moved in at the end of June, just after my first year at Franklin ended, and I found myself doing most of the unpacking. I wiped down the wooden shelves in the tiny living room and lined them with my favorite novels. Ever since I had first left home, I had brought with me every one of my books I had ever loved. So even my favorite ones from 8th grade now found their way to my new shelves. My dog-eared copies of A Separate Peace and A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. were lovingly placed next to more recent additions like the God of Small Things and A Suitable Boy. Every night I worked toward making the cottage our new home while Bill went off to work. I placed photos of the two of us in college over the mantle and cut wild roses and arranged them in old mason jars. The fireplace hinted at all of our cozy nights to come. In the meantime, I found a slice of heaven in the Adirondack chair under one of the trees in our garden. I knew come September, it would be the perfect spot for me to correct my new students' papers. I couldn't wait to discover whose sparkling eyes were going to inspire me most in the coming school year. The Friday before Labor Day, I arrived early at Franklin Intermediate, eager to set up my classroom. I had filled my silver Toyota with boxes of supplies, folders, paper, and marking pens. My friend Susie Price, the art teacher, was in the hallway, stapling colored paper on the bulletin board when I walked inside. I knew it would be a full-blown art gallery of student works on display in less than 2 weeks' time. "Hey, beauty," she said. In truth, Susie was the real beauty, with bright red lips and perfect skin, and all her scarves and mismatched separates. She had this artistic way of styling herself I so envied. Come winter, when I'd be bundled up in a practical wool cardigan, she'd be wearing one in chenille with buttons made of sea glass. Good summer? The best. No more reverse commute from the city. Bill and I found a great new place, a cottage out in Stony Brook. That's amazing news, Maggie. I need to move out of my place one of these days. Living in a basement isn't good for an artist's soul. Check out the penny saver, I hollered over my shoulder as I carried my box down toward the classroom. Room number 203, my classroom, was smack in the middle of Franklin's West Wing. Like the majority of Long Island's public schools, Franklin's interior was devoid of any charm or architectural detail. The ceilings were low, the cement block walls were painted a drab shade of putty, and the floors were a checkerboard of linoleum tile. But nearly all my fellow teachers relished the opportunity to defy the 1960s functional architecture and transform their surroundings into something inspiring for their students once they stepped through the threshold of their classroom. We all prided ourselves in the various themes we used to decorate our rooms. That summer, I had deliberated over mine for weeks before finally deciding on the mind as a powerful tool. I spent hours creating a template for a squiggly shaped brain with all of its infinite coils. I then color-coded each section with an array of neon magic markers to highlight the two parts. I made the left side of my template orange to show the children the logical brain, where language and analysis were generated. And then I highlighted the right side in pink for the creative brain, the area that sparkled daydreaming and imagination. I also made a miniature brain for each of my 24 students and wrote their names in the center with a thick black Sharpie. I hurried to my classroom, eager to begin working on setting up my bulletin board. When I entered my classroom, much to my surprise, I found a yellow Post-it note from the principal already taped to my desk. "Ms. Topper, need to speak with you when you get a chance. I'll be in my office all day. Stop by whenever it's convenient. Thank you, T. Nelson." I wondered what he could possibly want to discuss on my first day back. I checked myself in the mirror, took a deep breath to calm my nerves, and prepared to go see him. Principal Nelson was standing over his metal filing case when I walked into his office. A desk fan was circulating warm air in the corner. "Glad to see you, Maggie," he gestured for me to sit down. "Did you have a good summer?" "Yes, thank you, but I'm happy to be going back to school." "Good to hear." He smiled as he walked over to his desk and settled into his chair. "I have an unusual request for you." He leaned in closer to me. "Maggie, I was pleased with your work here last year. You bring an enviable enthusiasm to your classroom." I blushed and was about to deflect the praise when Mr. Nelson lifted his hand to stop me. "No need to say anything more on that subject. I just wanted you to know that I'm looking forward to a great second year with you here at Franklin." He cleared his throat. "And in fact, I was so pleased, I thought of you right away when I got the special assignment from the superintendent." Sounds intriguing. I felt a surge of nervous energy pass through me. "There's a child entering the 6th grade this year who just moved into the district. He was actually slotted to be in your class, but from what I gather of the details, he was born with a heart defect that has really weakened him." I felt my stomach tighten. Since he's too weak to be at school right now, the administration has agreed to send tutors to his house for him so he doesn't fall behind. And I was hoping you'd be his English language arts tutor. He tapped his desk with 2 fingers as he awaited my response. We're obviously hoping he'll get his strength back and be able to join your class later on in the year. But in the meantime, the district will pay for you to visit him after your classes and here each day. We were thinking 2 days a week to start. The administration will be arranging another tutor to help him with his math and science, but I don't believe he or she will be from Franklin. He folded his hands on his desk. Does that sound like something you'd be interested in doing, Mrs. Topper? The excitement I felt only seconds before was now replaced by dread. The memory of a sick little girl from my childhood flashed through my mind, her eyes pressed to the window as the school bus passed by her house. I could feel the color draining from my face and my mind froze. I wanted to say something professional and well-meaning, like how wonderful it would be to teach a student one-on-one, or how it would be a privilege to tutor a child who was in need, but my words failed me. I could only feel myself fidgeting nervously in my chair. Mr. Nelson leaned forward again. So can I count on you, Miss Topper? I swallowed hard, desperate to do something that would at least enable me to respond. But I could not stop thinking about my childhood neighbor, Ellie. What's the student name? I pushed myself to ask. Principal Nelson lifted a sheet of paper from his desk and squinted. Yuri Krasny, he said, the name quickly. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right. Yuri, I said the name again. It sounded exotic and interesting, not like all the Michaels and Jonathans that were so plentiful at Franklin Intermediate. I felt a whirlwind of emotions run through me. Thoughts of wanting to help a child in need, and the fear of the emotional baggage that I'd been carrying around for 15 years. I knew it would be a very special opportunity to tutor him, but would you mind if I took the long weekend to think about it? I just want to make sure I'm not spread too thin in the afternoon. Mr. Nelson looked surprised. Well, sure, Maggie. He tucked his pencil behind his ear and pushed himself away from his desk, the wheels of his chair squeaking across the tile floor. Take a look at your schedule and get back to me Tuesday. But I'll have to decide on another teacher if you're not up to it, so please don't take any longer than that. Of course, and I'm sorry for needing the extra time. But I do hope you'll see the importance of this assignment, he added. It's unique, and I think you'd be well suited for it. I nodded. I knew it was a vote of confidence for Mr. Nelson to have asked me, but deep down I worried if I was up to tutoring a sick child in his home. My mind kept returning to Ellie. That is the thing about memory. As hard as we try to will ourselves to forget certain events, our histories remain. I thought of the serpentine coils on the miniature brains I had made from tucked away in the intricate. But like most things, our stories can remain buried for only so long. Okay, so that's my little reading for you. Many of you are on Long Island, so I think it's nice to also read a story about a teacher who's actually teaching on Long Island. So if you do get a chance to pick up The Secret of Clouds, I think you'll find a lot of the local spots familiar, particularly those on 25A, because it does take place in Stony Brook Village. And the book also is inspired by a true life story of a teacher that I know who teaches in the Syosset School District. So a lot of the themes in the book are inspired by her. So I see all the questions have started already, so I'm going to take a look and answer them. The question is, we love reading The Secret of Clouds. Did you have? So I was really blessed to have a lot of teachers along the way that inspired me and noticed that I had a gift for writing and encouraged me to read as much as possible. So, but the teacher that I often reference, or at least the 2 teachers that I often reference in my talks about The Secret of Clouds, was my first grade teacher, Mrs. Goldberg at St. James Elementary School. And I always share this story that when it was the first week of school and she passed around a piece of paper and then walked to all of our desks and took a glass jar of blue tempera paint, and she took a paintbrush and put a blob on the center of the paper and told us what we saw. And I wrote a little short story about a flying pickle and how it zoomed around the room and had these magical properties. And when I got the little story back, on the top she wrote, "You have a gift with words." And really, I always get a little weepy when I tell that story, because it wasn't my mother or my brother or my uncle or my grandmother who told me I had a gift of words. It was Mrs. Goldberg. And not only that, she was the first person who encouraged me to look around and, and use my imagination and to write what I saw. And I apply those tenets to this day when I write. So I really think Mrs. Goldberg was my most influential teacher. The second question: has the pandemic given you ideas for writing a new story? So I certainly do not want to write a dystopian novel or a sci-fi novel or anything that kind of has a virus or an epidemic or quarantine in it anytime in the near future. Probably for me, I think being sheltering in place and being at home wasn't such a great transition for me, because I work at home every single day, and I really only travel for book tour or for research. Otherwise, I'm home in front of my computer writing and dreaming or reading. So that sort of quiet life is typical for me. But having a crowded house filled with other people has been a big adjustment, because I am used to sort of having this cocoon of silence that enables me to create. But I think I'm going to be staying with historical fiction for some time in the future. And although I think this COVID-19 will become obviously part of history and writers will be writing about it in the years to come, for me, writing is a form of joy and escape. And I don't think I want to revisit this anytime soon. Okay, next question. My child is a reluctant reader. Do your children like to read, and how do you encourage reading with kids? Good question. So I have a son and a daughter. My daughter just became a teenager this summer. My son is in high school, and so he's also a teenager. And they, my son was an early reader, and he loved to read a lot when he was younger. And then when sports took over his life, he started reading less, and I was really, really frustrated with that. My daughter was a later reader than my son, but once she sort of cracked the code, she loved reading. So I feel like I have, I had different experiences. I don't know if any of them were reluctant readers in the beginning, but I will say that the best advice I can give you is to find books that have themes with what your child likes. So when my son started not wanting to read as much as he had when he was younger, I really tried to have a discussion with him and see, well, like, why are you not reading as much as you had when you were little? And what he told me is that he really preferred to read things that were based on fact, which to me was like an epiphany, because I would never think of giving nonfiction to a young adult. But once he said that, I really started looking for books that were autobiographies, books that were based on sports players or people in history, and sort of feeding him that way, feeding his brain to give him things that I could say this really happened, or this person really was a true life character or a real sports person. And, that became something he really enjoyed. So, for example, your son could read Shoeless Joe and learn about his backstory and how he became a baseball player, and how that myth came about that he had no shoes. I bought my son a book on the history of Nathan Hot Dogs and the founder of that. My daughter really loved historical fiction. She definitely prefers fiction to nonfiction, and she loved the Magical Treehouse series and how they travel all around the world. And that to her was really exciting to read. And then she started going on to Ruta Septi's books, like what's it called? Like The Salt in the Sea. She read another book recently that she loved that was based on the quarantine. It was like a leprosy island, I think.
It looks like we might have just lost Alyson. Technology is really giving us a run for our money with these readathons. We're going to wait and see if she's able to come back on to the Zoom. if we give us just a couple more minutes, we appreciate your patience and support as we move through this. Alyson has done an amazing job. We love the book. I love that it's about teachers and the relationship that teachers have with their children, some of the students that they have. And we're grateful that she's on. We're going to give her a couple more minutes. Hopefully she can come back on. Kind of texting her to see if she's able to do it. While we're waiting for her, I'd like to just talk a little bit more about the Readathon. There are so many ways in which you can get involved with the Readathon, and we hope that you will consider doing so. You could do it as, you can create your own personal fundraising page. If you go to the link that we have on our Facebook, you can simply donate. You can participate in the live reads that we're doing right now. Or you can join us for our trivia night, which is going to be next Wednesday night, and it is about book series. So that's going to be a fun event. If you've already donated to the Readathon, it is free. It's a gift from us to you. If you haven't donated, you can still do so and sign up. The winner will receive a $100 gift card, Amazon gift card. So it should be a fun family night. And last time there was a run for the money and it wound up in a tie. So if you think you know your book series and you think you can give it a whirl, then join us. Not sure what's happening with Alyson, if she hasn't popped in yet. You might have to call it a day, but we're very grateful to Alyson for her generosity of her time today. Certainly one of the, and we hope consider buying it. The Lost Wives is going to be made into a major motion picture, so we'll keep an eye out for that. For now, we would like to thank you all and hope you have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow again at 3 p.m. Thank you. Have a great day.